Hey, here's a novel idea. How about a musical retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet set in New York's Lower East Side during the 1940s? How about Juliet be a Jewish Holocaust survivor from Israel? Romeo will be a Catholic boy, and the two fall in love during Easter Passover celebrations in the middle of anti-Semitic conflicts between their families. Maybe even call it East Side Story. Well, of course, it sounds familiar. That's because that's the original concept that director and choreographer Jerome Robbins came up with in 1947. But I'll tell you why it took 10 years to change it to West Side Story and get it on Broadway. You're going to be hearing a lot about West Side Story in the months to come. A new movie version directed by Steven Spielberg is set to be released next December. Tony Kushner has written a new screenplay for it. And then there's a new reimagining of the show set to return to Broadway. It's the sixth revival since its premiere in 1957, if anybody's counting. It's directed by avant-garde director Ivo van Hove, known for his austere, violent, video-heavy stagings. In his production of West Side Story, one often sees the actors on stage at the same time that their faces are in close-up on giant video screens behind them. Sometimes entire scenes will be shot off stage altogether, with the audience only seeing the video of the actors. There's a lot of blood in Van Hove's version. In one scene, somebody gets stabbed and a gang member captures it on a cell phone. In a 60 Minutes interview, Stephen Sondheim fully supported the new takes on his own first show. He said, "That's the whole point to the theater. It's alive, it grows, and can be reinterpreted with changing times." When Jerome Robbins first approached Leonard Bernstein in 1947 about musicalizing Romeo and Juliet in New York's Lower East Side, well, the two had already successfully collaborated on the ballet Fancy Free and later the musical On the Town. Now, Bernstein wanted to make West Side Story a grand opera, but then agreed to Robbins' challenge of writing a musical with an unhappy ending, filling it with music that is as powerful as in an opera, but yet sung in a musical theater style by ordinary singers. Arthur Lawrence was brought on board to write the book for the project, now indeed titled East Side Story. They all liked it, but they felt that it was too derivative of a play from the 1920s called Abbey's Irish Rose. Ideas stalled. Robbins, Lawrence, and Leonard Bernstein abandoned the project and went their separate ways. Years later, in 1955, the three came back together to revisit the project. It seems that it was Leonard Bernstein who saw Marlon Brando in the movie The Wild One and noted the Chicano turf wars in New York's Hell's Kitchen. So the action and the characters were shifted, and the project was retitled West Side Story, taking place where Lincoln Center is today. Originally, Bernstein was writing music and lyrics, but he was also working on the music for Candide at the same time, and it was decided to bring in a lyric writer to relieve Bernstein's workload. A 26-year-old Stephen Sondheim applied for the job, and it was actually Bernstein who recognized his enormous talent and hired him. But the whole project nearly blew up several times. Jerome Robbins became quite the dictator, making changes without consulting his collaborators. The main producer and financial backer backed out. Bernstein got pissed off that he was constantly being asked to cut passages of his precious operatic music, and Stephen Sondheim got upset because he was forced to keep much of Bernstein's original efforts at lyrics. Columbia Records at first refused to record the cast album, citing the music as too difficult and depressing. Besides, the original lyrics contained several profanities that had to be cleaned up, including the F-bomb at the end of Gee Officer Krupke. By opening night at the Winter Garden Theater in 1957, the collaborators were barely talking to one another. Audiences and critics appreciated the edgy innovations of West Side Story, Bernstein's music, and Robbins' dance numbers, but West Side Story was far from a hit. It ran just short of 2 years. It wasn't until the first film version came out in 1961 with Natalie Wood that West Side Story began to be appreciated by the public at large. Well, that's your Broadway Almanac for this time. Be sure to check out my new Broadway theater trips at anightonthetown.org. I'm George Harder. So long until next time.
Cause no one wants a fella with a social disease. The authors are grumpy. What are we to do?